me. The light switch went on for me. Fortunately, I stumbled across outstandingpoker.com and signed up and became a member. I started watching their videos, and it was pretty much like a switch went on for me. All the things that I read about and studied and heard about over the last 4 or 5 years all came to focus for me. I was able to immediately my win rate substantially. Press play to hear a testimonial message from Rob. One ranked poker training site on PTSR. Outstanding Poker focuses on one goal and one goal only: obtaining a certain level of income at poker. The instruction is direct, to the point, and brings you from the beginning to the end without any gaps in the learning process. Here is how to win. This is what you do. Now go do it. You just can't argue with that kind of simplicity. Low-risk strategy lessons at a very low cost. Very nice. Read more.
So hand like Queen Jack offsuit, I think this is where I'd start to raise this. If unopened to me, I'd raise this definitely in the cutoff. I think it's a fold if I was in middle position where this guy is seated right now. Now how to respond to his min raise here. I think I'm just going to go ahead and fold. I've touched on this in other videos, but I don't think I'm going to have a lot of credibility to make strong plays right now and expect people to fold. I think I've been splashed around quite a bit of late, and I just don't think that they're going to give me a lot of credit. So because of that, how I'm going to adjust is I'm going to start to tighten up my range and really have stronger hands that have a higher likelihood of flopping well, so that when I do hit flops, I have a higher likelihood of connecting with the flops, and when people play back at me, I'm going to have a better chance of being able to stay in the pot and hopefully not have to give it up. And basically connect well with the flop, so that I have a strong hand and can respond strongly to their. So the next thing I want to talk about in pre-flop play, the third concept is bet sizing when you're raising pre-flop. Now, generally at lower stakes like this, I would definitely recommend raising 4 times the big. If you're opening the pot, meaning no one has limped or raised or anything yet, and the action's on you, I would raise at least 4 times the big blind. Plus, if people have already limped, I'd raise another big blind per limper. So, say you're on the button and you have 1 limper and it's on you, and you have a decent hand that you want to raise. I'd be raising 5 times the big blind. So at these stakes, I'd raise it up to 250. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to give my opponent incorrect odds to call with their weaker hands that they're limping with. So I don't want to give them a cheap chance at calling with their suited connector and flopping strongly against my like pocket aces, and then stacking me because I really have no idea what kind of hand they have. Because if I'm only raising marginally, like say they limp and then I raise to $1.50, and I'm giving them odds to call one more dollar to see a flop. A lot of times they'll have odds to call with their marginal hands, such as like suited connectors. And if you're sitting on an overpair like pocket aces, pocket kings, it's going to be tough for you to really start to narrow down the range, because they're going to be calling with almost every hand that they limped with. So the reason we want to raise larger is, one, to really charge your opponents, give them incorrect odds to call with their weaker hands, and two, to really start to be able to narrow down their hand ranges post-flop, so that I know that if they're calling a big raise pre-flop, I know that they're not just sitting there with 5-3 offsuit. It's very unlikely that they're sitting there with 5-3 offsuit, because it's just anyone who has half a brain is going to know that it's just not going to be profitable to limp and call with 5-3 offsuit out of position. Combined with my read of my opponents, with how often they are getting involved in pots, I can start to narrow down their hand range and really accurately determine, well, how do different flops hit their hand range. So if the flop comes king 7 deuce, I know that a guy that limp called a big raise pre-flop likely did not hit that flop unless he's sitting on like an ace king or king queen type hand, which you'll potentially see people limp calling with those type of hands, even though it's still going to be unprofitable to be calling pre-flop, limping and then calling out of position with like a king queen offsuit type hand. So I can't stress enough that just never be limping. And when you're coming in the pots, you want to be raising, and you want to be raising large amounts, so that you're charging your opponents and making them make mistakes by calling big bets with their suited connectors. And I often get the complaint, well, I don't want to I have pocket aces now, I don't want to drive people out of the pot, so I'm only going to raise maybe 3 times the big blind up for a limper and try to jack it up. Well, what's going to happen then is you're going to get the big blind to call, you're going to get the guy who limped to call, and then they're both going to have like just 2 completely random hands. One might have like anything from like a mid pocket pair to a suited connector to like a king jack type hand. The other guy might have like 5-3. He's like, well, it's only $1 more to call since you've raised 3. The other guy's already called 3. I'm calling $1 to win a pot of $6 plus my $6.50 my initial limp. So sorry, 150 plus 150. So 350 is I'm calling $1 to win to see a flop where the pot's already 350. So it's going to be profitable for him to call with all his just random hands. So you're sitting there now with your pocket aces. Even if it's an overpair, you're not going to know the flop comes like, I don't know, queen 8-7. Now you're going to be like, well, what do I do now? Well, yeah, your opponents could have like a 10-9 type of hand be drawing. They could already have 8-7 and have you beat with 2 pair. They could have pocket 7s and have you crushed. And you're going to sit there wondering, well, how do I put my opponents on a hand now? Because I've only raised small pre-flop, and I've given my opponents odds to call with all their different types of hands. So I'm not going to be comfortable getting all the money in now with my pocket aces, even though it's a great hand pre-flop, and now that the flop comes and it's connected well with a ton of their limp calling range, where they have odds to call with all these different sorts of hands, that it's just you're gonna have a tough time. And when I have my strong hands like pocket aces, I'm looking to build a pot and get all the money in. So I'm gonna be raising strongly pre-flop, and I'm like, ideally I'm gonna get one caller who's making a mistake by calling with his 8-7 offsuit, and then I'm gonna be playing the flop strongly, trying to get the stacks in. If my opponent's sitting there check calling the flop in turn because he's happened to hit top pair with his like 8-7 offsuit, or even like king queen offsuit. And those are your profitable situations that you want to be in with your strong hands. So I can't stress enough, don't be concerned about driving opponents out of the pot with your pocket aces type hands, because if they actually have a strong hand, or like you want to force them to make a mistake, and by only raising small or like limping or trying to be tricky and slow playing, you're only making the mistake yourself and allowing yourself to be outdrawn the flop and then put a lot of money in where you think you have the best hand, but being behind. So here's an interesting spot. We've got a raise under the gun from a guy. I haven't seen too much action from this guy, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold. You really want to, at the same time, as I've said, when you want to tighten up when you're out of position under the gun. At the same time, you should use the fact that if your opponents know what they're doing and you see that they've been playing kind of tight, they're also likely to be tightening up when they're under the gun. So I'd put this guy's hand range a lot narrower towards more premium type hands. So a hand like 10-8 offsuit just doesn't play well against those hands. And this is really where you get into trouble, and I can't stress this enough, but you really don't want to be simply calling hands pre-flop, even if you're in position, because you get into trouble where you hit a flop like this where you've hit top pair, but your opponent's now betting strong, and you really don't know what to do, because, well, is he sitting on a draw, or is he sitting on pocket aces right here? And you could sit there and check call down, but your reverse implied odds are just so huge because you just never know where you're at. And yeah, it's tough to fold top pair, but you really don't know, well, where your opponent's at. So exactly what happened here, he's sitting on pocket queen. So if you're sitting on like your 10-8 there, well, you're like, oh, I got top pair, I can't fold that. Well, you really run into a ton of trouble, because he's going to be betting 2 or 3 streets, and you just end up losing quite a large sum of money. So I just think it's best to fold those pre-flop against tight guys that haven't been messing around too much, and really save entering pots for when you're going to play aggressive. Save it for when you get a guy that's just limping a ton, or even if he's raising a ton, then 3-bet him with those marginal hands, represent a strong hand. But when you're simply just calling against strong players who are playing a tight range, it's just not going to be profitable. And I can't stress that enough. So I think we definitely covered a lot of interesting concepts pre-flop. And I think even if you're a longtime member of outstandingpoker.com, I think that it is definitely good to go over these again and really to shore up some of the leaks that you might have with the pre-flop play. So I hope you guys have learned a lot, and if you do have any questions about these sorts of things, I'm happy to respond to your forum posts. So if you go to outstandingpoker.com/forum, there's also a link in the members section. Feel free to post your questions about some of the concepts we've covered either in this video today or in previous videos. So thanks for watching. This is Attitude 2 Ataros for outstandingpoker.com.